Alright, hello everyone. Here we are back for a Golf Clash tutorial here, and this is hole number 4. It is going to be for the second tee box here. So let me just highlight this one here. And let me think here. A couple different ways I do this. Usually I'll be using a power 3 ball for the for this course if it pops up. Like if I know it's on kind of the hit list, and that'll usually make the line for wood to driver right around here. So for the most part we're gonna, but no, that's not right. That is not right. So wood is up here, and then this is actually iron down here. So let's take a look here. Different wind angles. And let's talk about kind of your options. As I mentioned, you know, if you're not using a power 3 ball, you're pretty much going to have to stick with the wood case no matter what. Maybe power 2 you could get away with when some certain winds are strong tailwinds, but you know, really using a tightener kingmaker here is going to be much more advantageous. Make sure that you can kind of cover yourself in a lot of winds here. And so what we'll be looking at for this hole is, you know, B52 somewhere in the 4. Just needs to be a 4 or higher. Similarly, you know, Goliath is going to be the next. So Goliath, and you know, it just needs to kind of be a 6. It's going to be the next best. And then let me just throw a backbone on here. We'll just put an 8. It's going to be kind of where you want in terms of length, making sure that you start to get that length number in, which is probably somewhere around 124 or something when you're at a backbone 8. You know, keep in mind that this is going to be the 135 line. So if I'm using a backbone, you know, there's going to be a club gap of 10 yards. You could end up kind of short-siding yourself and only be able to use tailwinds with a power 3 ball. So, you know, that's one of the things that you need to be considering. You know, there's a couple different ways to play this. So let's just kind of dive right in here. And what I'll typically use is my club of choice. This is first priority shot. We're going to land about here. We're going to hop it into this fairway. It's going to require quite a bit of side spin to do this, and then just kind of roll it out in this fashion. So what it's going to require to do this is probably full side spin. So even with a Titan ball, you might need to still curl it just a little bit, depending on, you know, the way that that ball guide's offset though too. So if I get a right to left wind, you know, I'm definitely going to have to curl this shot. If I get a left to right wind, you know, Titan might be okay because the wind's going to help it get back over to the right. So you'll just try to offset your ball guide a little bit, and typically, you know, the ones who do that the best are the ones who end up winning. But this is the general path of what you want. And, you know, just for an example here, you know, if my wind's like this, you know, what I'll probably need to do is something along the lines of this, to where it looks like the ball guide's rolling out this way. Keeping in mind, after the wind touches the ball, it's actually going to follow the yellow line. So, you know, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. What you'll usually need to do for this shot, you can do it with tailwinds. You can do it with very, very mild headwinds. Not something that I'd really recommend. So I'd kind of like to keep it for this half of winds up here. And what I'll typically use is about maybe, so let's talk about the side wind. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 1, and these are backspin values. So 1 backspin, give or take. And, you know, as it gets a larger tailwind, I can start to crank this up, 1.5. And, you know, I got to make sure that my second bounce kind of lands towards this top of this fairway and then just kind of trickles on, and that's how you'll get the best speed here. With a straight down tailwind, you can use 2, for instance. Again, but this is going to vary depending on how strong that wind gets as well. But that's pretty much the only way you'll be able to use that shot. And what I'll typically do here is about max plus 25, give or take, somewhere in the neighborhood of that. So let's talk about tail, side first, because we won't even really be able to hit the headwind case here. So what I'll use is pretty much, actually let me do this another color, keep it the same. So as I was mentioning, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of max plus 25% will be kind of right on the money. And again, you know, you're kind of shooting down to a lower target, plus you're going to be very close to that max line for these shots. And that's why, you know, you'll need the over adjustment here. Similar with the side wind, you know, right around max plus 25 seems to pretty much nail it here. Somewhere around that seems to be relatively perfect. And, you know, let's start to talk about this next case, which is going to be, you know, kind of a sniper here, and you'll need at least an 8. Alternatively, if you don't have an 8, you're going to need a guardian. And very similar, I don't know if I mentioned it in my first tee video, but you'll need, you know, these same minimum requirements because the backspin becomes so critical to make sure that you can actually crank and stop the ball for these shots. So very similarly to the first tee box, you'll need, you know, to definitely have that backspin totals up a little bit. And because of that fact, you know, the hammerhead that you're going to need is quite substantial. So let's take a look here. So the hammerhead, I'm trying to think of what it is. It's probably a 6, I believe. Similarly with the cataclysm, you can I think it's also very close to you know, a 5 ideally, or 4. I'm just trying to think of where the first backspin increase is, and it's quite substantial. I think it's somewhere around a Cat 5. I can't remember for some reason off the top of my head. It's kind of skipping me. But whenever, you know, that backspin gets up to kind of 60, or its first increase, you know, at least, and, you know, I think it might be a 5, but wherever that jump is, that's where, you know, I'm kind of looking at for that case. And ideally, you know, I'll want sniper because of the fact that I'm going to have to cheat this shot so close to this bunker. So you'll see kind of 2 ways that I'll play. Usually on the, you know, let's just say hypothetically, you know, the wind is going this way. This is the shot that I'll play, is right here. And I'll land right here. I'll hop it right here and hop it right here, and just kind of, and all I'll need to do is kind of offset this ball guide and get it very close to this bunker. And the wind should help pull it over towards the hole. So even if it looks like the ball might trickle into the bunker, you know, this is pretty much the way that you'll want to offset it, and then just let the wind carry it over towards the hole. So you might want to get a little bit aggressive with it looks like with your ball guide, because that wind, again, is going to help it actually move in away from that bunker. And what I'll usually do with the ring adjustment is, you know, very close to a mid adjustment, which is also very close to max minus 10. So these adjustments are pretty much identical. Doesn't matter how you look at it, it's very, very close. A mid adjustment is very close to max minus 10. Keep in mind, with a stronger headwind, we're going to need to go beyond that. So, you know, in fact, this is probably a bad spot to even put this max minus 10. I probably, you know, it's much more closer to a side wind. It's going to be much more for this mid. And I won't even use this shot for a tailwind. So best case scenario, I'll use it here. And we'll just erase this case because it's very, very, very little chance with a headwind you'll be able to get away with max minus 10. But let's just say, for instance, the wind was pointed like this, which is barely a headwind, then you can use that max -10 number. You can treat this as a side wind, essentially. But aside from that, you're going to need to at least go max and up to, depending on how large it gets. Sometimes you'll use max +10, and sometimes you'll use max +20 for this shot. So it really just depends on how strong that wind. It doesn't get double digits. Is it 9, 10 miles per hour? I might start to use max +20% because it's really going to resist getting to that spot the more rings you go. And similarly to this shot, there's another shot. The adjustments are going to be the same, so all the adjustments that I just wrote there are going to be very similar. If you can crank this backspin up, 6 to 7 bars, you can also, and this will be kind of the shot that I play when the wind is pointing this way. Or, that's not exactly the best representation because usually it's a headwind. Something that's pointed down towards 430, for instance, I'll just use this. And the reason being is because when I offset this ball guide, which is usually done, I'll try to crank as much backspin as I can, 6.5 bars. So in these cases here, I'm going to use max or very, very close to max. It's going to be very, very close to max in these cases for my backspin. So 6.5 bars is about where I'm looking. And all these clubs, except for Guardian 6, that's basically what I mean with the 6.5. And I'll essentially never do a Guardian full backspin shot. It's very, very challenging to do. You probably could do it and land up on this top fringe, but you would need a substantial headwind to be able to do that shot. So for the most part, I'm just going to kind of land towards this fairway. And as I mentioned, when the wind points this way, it's just going to kind of naturally glide that way. So if I go 6.5 back and 4 side spin, you'll see that the ball guide's probably offset. Looks like it's rolling through the center of the green. However, when the wind actually affects it in this direction, it's just going to kind of naturally take it towards the hole. So I'll need very, very minimal curl. Maybe just a little tweak of curl towards the right. But aside from that, it pretty much plays straight up, and so does these. So this keeps me from having to curl at all, and I can just use my side spin. And that's one of the reasons that I'll play it. And you can see, since they're almost the same height in terms of land zone, that the ring adjustments you'll pretty much keep identical, to these blue. Whether I'm going blue or purple, these adjustments you can just pretty much use for both. So good luck with that hole, guys. Hopefully that helps you out. And see you guys on the next one.